Hi, welcome to this texture projection tutorial. This is the model we're going to be texturing today. It's been subdivided a few times so it's nice and smooth. It's got a basic UV layout. The UVs are unsmooth, the borders are unsmooth. You can smooth them if you want. I thought I'd just leave them as they are for now. So we're going to be using Mari and Photoshop to texture this model. And the reference images we're going to be using are these ones. This is Adobe Bridge. Bridge is quite good because it gives you it displays the camera data information, so the f-stop and the shutter speed and the ISO settings, as well as other camera and lens information as well. These were shot on a Nikon camera, so these are Nikon raw format images, .NEFs. And they were shot with this Macbeth chart. We're going to be using this chart to grade the images to make sure they're the right color and the right brightness. So let's start. We're going to select all of these and try and process these all at once. We're going to open those, and that will open them in Adobe's Camera Raw plugin for Photoshop. This particular version of Camera Raw is the 7.2 beta version, so some of your settings might be different if you're using a different version. So we're going to process all of these images at once. So I've got the first one selected there, so I'm going to shift and select the last one. So we've got all of these images selected. You have to be careful what order you select these images in, because if I say I select the last one first and then shift and select the first one, I can't then get to the Macbeth chart because I can't see it in the main view. So you need to make sure you select the Macbeth chart image first, and then shift and select the last one. So we're going to be using these tabs over here. So let's start with this basic tab. Now in previous versions of Camera Raw, the default value for the blacks has been 5, which means that anything below 5 in the RGB scale, 0 to 255, anything below 5 will be clipped to pure black. So the first thing to do is make sure that that's on 0. In this particular version of Camera Raw, the default is 0, so that's fine. So we're going to go on to this next tab here, this tone curve tab, and there's kind of two sub tabs. We want the point sub tab, and we want to make sure this is on linear. I know in previous versions the default is medium contrast, which will kind of do a post-process contrast manipulation to the image, which isn't what we want. We want to get it as close to what actually came from the camera as possible, so we want to make sure that that's on linear, so it's not doing anything to the contrast of the image. This third tab along is the detail tab. So we can see here that Camera Raw is trying to do some kind of post-process sharpening and noise reduction on the image. We don't want that, so we're going to turn all this off. We can do our own sharpening and noise reduction later when we get the image into Photoshop. So I'm just going to slide those all the way down to 0. The radius one will never go down to 0; it goes to 0.5. So the next tab we're interested in is this one here. It's lens correction tab. These are obviously raw images that have come straight from the camera, so they've still got lens distortion in them. So we need to get rid of that, and the way to do that is to just check this box here, this enable lens profile corrections box. If I toggle that on and off, you can see the kind of difference between the corrected and the uncorrected version. It also corrects for the lens vignetting around the edges. You'll see the edges go slightly lighter. So Camera Raw will have a lot of lens profiles pre-programmed into it, and if you're using a DSLR, it's more than likely that it'll have your lens profile already there. So if not, you can just go and select it manually, select the lens and the camera and the profile. You can also do the actual distortion and vignetting manually as well. You can adjust those settings. So that's the first part. We've kind of got those images ready. Now we're gonna grade them using this Macbeth chart to make sure the color and brightness is more accurate to what it was on the day of the shoot. So the first thing we're going to do is white balance. So we're going to use this tool here, this white balance tool. So I'm just going to select that, and I'm going to click in this white square here. Now when I click, you'll notice the image color changes. So I'm going to click a few times in there just to make sure I didn't pick a stray red or green pixel. And you'll notice now that the color is a lot more accurate to what it was on the day of the shoot under the real life lighting conditions. So that's sorted the color out. Next thing we need to do is sort the overall brightness. We're going to use this square here on the Macbeth chart. This square here is calibrated to be pure mid-gray, so it's 50% gray. So that's what we need to look at. 50% gray in RGB is 128, so we need to make sure that this is displaying at 128. So the easiest way to do that is to use this tool here, this color sampler tool. So I'm just going to select that, and I'm going to put 2 sample points on this square. So I'm going to drop 1 there and 2 there. And you'll notice up here you've got these numbers. So number 1, so these RGB values here are the color values for this color sampler, and number 2, these RGB values here are the values for this color sampler. So what we need to do is go back to the basic tab over here and adjust the exposure until these numbers, these RGB values, read an average of 128. They'll never be absolutely perfect across the board, but you need to get them as close as possible. So I'm just going to slide that up, keeping an eye on those values in the top left. So probably looking about there. That might be a little bit too bright. Let's take it 1 down. Probably about there. As I said, these aren't going to be all matching up. If they're way off, you can re-white balance just to try and get them a bit closer. So we're looking at an average of about 128 there. So I can clear those samplers now. So that's graded the image to the color and brightness that matches what it was, what the actual lighting conditions were on the day of the shoot. So now we're gonna set the color space and bit depth of this image. We're going to use this kind of hot link down at the bottom here. If I click that, we can see the color space options we've got here. We're going to make sure that that's on sRGB because we're painting this one in sRGB. And we're going to make sure the bit depth is on 16-bit. I think the defaults for these are slightly different. The defaults are Adobe RGB and 8-bit, so we want to make sure that's sRGB and 16-bit. And this drop-down box here is the size of the image. We want to make sure we're not saving out the images any smaller or bigger than the original image size. We want to retain the exact original image size that came from the camera. So we're going to be choosing this option here. So I'm going to hit OK, and now we're ready to save. So I'm going to press this button down to the left here, Save Images. I'm going to call this reference. And I'm going to put an underscore in, and I'm going to do a 3-digit sequence number. You can use this drop-down box here, and it will give you all sorts of different options. And we're going to choose a 3-digit serial number, and we're going to start the numbering at number 1. It gives you an example there of what the actual file name will be for each of the files. And then we're going to select TIFF, which is an uncompressed image format. The metadata, we're going to retain all of the metadata just in case we need it at a later date. So all the information about the aperture and the shutter speed and the ISO, we're going to retain all of that. And the compression we're going to set to none. We can compress the images later if we need to, but at the moment we're just going to put these to none. So I'm going to hit save. Actually, let's just select a folder first. I'm just going to make a new folder in here. Let's call that graded. I'm going to select that and hit save, and that'll give you a little indicator down here of how many images there are left. Yours might be quicker or slower, but depending on how big the images are and how fast your computer is. So when that's done, we're going to click done. So now if we go back to Bridge, we can see that it's graded. It's displaying all these. These are still the NEF files it's displaying, but it's displaying them as we've just graded them. And you'll notice that each one of these thumbnails has a little circular symbol in the top right corner, and that means that it's been taken into RAW and graded somehow. If we go into our graded folder, we can see these are the TIFFs that was saved out. So those are the graded TIFFs. So the next thing we're going to do is look at bringing these into Mari and projecting them, which will be the next step of the lesson. In this next part of the lesson, we're going to look at setting up Mari ready for our projection and getting all our projection images ready to go. So I'm just going to open Mari. I'm using Mari version 1.5 v1. So we're going to start by making a new scene. So if we go to File, New, and we're going to give the first thing we're going to give it is a path to the geometry. So I'm going to click this button here and just point it to our head geometry, and then we're going to select this first checkbox here so we can give it a 4K color channel. You can specify a bigger size if you want. I'm going to stick to 4K for the moment. So I'm just going to click OK. So that will bring in our model. We've got an orthographic view selected, so we're going to change that to perspective. And you can see that the camera, the angle of view isn't really that good. It looks a bit strange. So the first thing we're going to do is adjust the field of view. So I'm just going to zoom out a bit. Let's just rotate that slightly. And then I'm going to adjust this slider here, this field of view slider. I'm going to take it down to probably maybe about 30. There we go, that looks about right. So if we press the number keys on the keyboard, you can see that it'll switch between set camera views. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to start with number 5, which is the front view, and we're going to use this as our projection lineup. So we need to get a snapshot of this out into Photoshop so we can start painting on it. And the way to do that is to use projectors. So we're going to open the projector palette. So if we go View, Palettes, and then Projectors, that will give us the projector palette. And we're going to right click on here and say Create Projector. And what that will do is it will create a camera looking through the current viewport. So I'm going to hit Create Projector. I'm going to double click that and rename it to Front because it's our front view. So the next thing I'm going to do is press number 1 on the keyboard, and that'll take it to this left view. And I'm going to create another projector. I'm going to call that Left. And then number 2 on the keyboard will go to the right view. So I'm going to create another projector. Call that Right. And then I'm just going to ignore 3 and 4 for now. 5 we've already done. 6 is the back, so I'm going to right click, Create Projector, and name that Back. So if we click on any one of these projectors, it will set the view to that camera. So let's start with this front camera. We need to take this as a snapshot into Photoshop. So the best way to do that is to unproject. So we're going to use this function here. So first of all we're going to give it an output file path. So I'm just going to click this button here, and I'm going to make a new folder and just call it Projection Images. I'm going to go into that folder, and I'm going to call this first image Front, and then you have to remember to put in the file extension. So in this case .tiff, because we're going to be using TIFF files. If you don't put the extension, it'll save it out as something else. I think it's an EXR. So yeah, make sure you put in .tiff and hit Save. And that won't actually do anything until you hit Unproject. But we need to change a few more settings first. So we're going to use make sure the Use Default Shader is selected. That's fine. We're going to change the lighting mode from flat to full. So it's not showing the flat constant shaded, which isn't what we want. We want the full shaded version. Color depth, we're painting these in 16-bit, so we're going to change that to 16. And the size, we're going to put that up to 4K because our projection images are going to be done at 4K. So with all those selected, we're going to hit Unproject, and that, in a few seconds that'll be done. That'll now save out a version of that as a 4K unprojected image. So we're going to do the same for all of the rest of these cameras. So we're going to change the lighting to full, color depth 16-bit, 4K, output file path. So this one is going to be left.tiff, and then unproject. And move to the next one, right. File path is going to be right.tiff. The lighting is full, color depth is 16-bit, and the size is 4K. Unproject. And the last one, back. File path is back.tiff. Default shader, full lighting, 16-bit, 4K. Unproject. So now that's saved out those 4 images, ready for us to paint onto in Photoshop. So if I minimize that, so if we go to Photoshop now. This is Photoshop CS6. So let's start with the front image. We're just going to open. If I go to projection images front and then open the front. So this is the image as it came out of Mari. So that's what the Mari camera is looking at. We need to put our projection image onto that. So we're going to go to our graded folder where our projection images are, and I'm going to select the front image and just double click that to open. So we've got our Mari unproject and our reference image. So now what we need to do is fit this reference image to this unproject image, ready to put it back on to the model. So I'm just gonna drag this across onto here, and then we can close this one down. Just gonna maximize that. So now we've got these 2 layers here. So I'm going to put this reference layer underneath our Mari projection layer, and we're going to turn this into a wireframe so that we can see through it. The best way to do that is to use the Find Edges filter. So I'm going to go Filter, Stylize, Find Edges, and then the next thing we're going to do is invert that, and then we're going to use this box here to change the blending mode into screen. So what that'll do is give us a kind of transparent wireframe that we can work with. It's a little bit transparent at the moment, a little bit too transparent. So I'm just gonna adjust that. I'm just gonna do a levels adjustment on this layer just to brighten it up a bit so we can see it a bit better. There we go. Just gonna bring the brightness up a bit. There we go. So with our reference layer selected, we now need to adjust this so it's a closer match to our projection model. So I'm just going to use the transform tool, so Control T, and then I'm just going to transform this so it's a little bit closer. The idea is to get it a little bit closer with each step. So this particular step, we're just going to try and get it in a rough kind of position, in a rough place. So I'd say probably something about that. It's not obviously not there yet, which is what we need to work on. So I'm going to hit Enter to apply that, and the next thing we're going to use is the warp tool. So if we go Edit, Transform, Warp, and this will help us to get it a little bit closer still. I'm just going to just gently warp this into place. I'm just going to push the eyes up a little bit. Pull the nose down. Again, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to do the job completely, but we need to get it as close as possible with each tool that we use. So I'm just going to pull the chin down a bit there. Okay, there we go. I'm going to hit Enter to apply that. And then the next thing I'm going to use is the liquefy filter to just finish it off. So we need to go into advanced mode here to show the backdrop. The backdrop that we're going to show is our wireframe layer, which I think was layer 0. I'm just going to adjust the opacity of that wireframe layer so we can see through it. I'm going to take that down to probably about 20 there. And then we're going to use this warp tool, and we're going to zoom in nice and close to get the details in the right position. So again, I'm going to put the density of the brush on full, and maybe drop the brush pressure down to half, and then just going to enlarge the brush slightly, and then just gently warp this into position. So it's getting a bit closer. And then we can go across and work on the other eye, maybe slightly bigger brush. And maybe put the brush pressure up slightly. That's better. And I'm going to go down and work on the nose, just get the nose in the right position. And then go down and work on the lips. I have to use a smaller brush just to get these fine details. You can always hide and show the backdrop just to make sure we're not messing the image up. So we can just zoom out and maybe get some of these side parts a bit closer. Not really too worried about the extreme edge, because we're going to get that from the other projections, from the side projections. So I'm just going to adjust this slightly. Just pull this in a bit. I'm just going to shrink the brush down and just push this in slightly. Again, just show and hide that, just to make sure we're not going too far. Maybe just adjust these a little bit. So that looks about right, so we're going to hit OK. And that will return our liquefy result, and we can see the finished product there. So we've got the position right, so the next thing we need to do is remove the lighting, the shadows and the highlights and the occlusion in this image, ready for projection, because when we render it later on, the render will add the lighting back into it. So we want to get rid of all these speck hits and all this shadowing and all the occlusion shadows. What we're going to do now is just start doing that. I'm going to put a group above here and then just call this lighting. And we're going to use adjustment layers. So I'm just going to click here and put down a levels adjustment layer. And in this box here, we're just going to slide the input whites value up quite high, because we're going to be looking at getting rid of the shadows first. So we don't want to go too high, but just kind of so it's nice and bright in these dark areas, these dark shadow areas. Want to make sure it's nice and bright. And then with the alpha of that layer selected, I'm just going to fill it with black. So I'm just going to fill that with black. So it's not applying that levels adjustment to anything yet, because it's a completely black alpha. Just going to hide that. So now what we need to do is paint white back onto our alpha, so that we affect certain parts of the image. So we're going to use a brush. I'm going to use a really soft brush, probably a 20% opacity, 20% flow, something like that. You can set your brush up to use pen pressure sensitivity and things if you want. I just prefer to use these. So now I'm just going to start brushing white onto these shadow areas. And you'll notice as you do it that it oversaturates these areas, which is fine. Just check my brush there, that's fine. It'll oversaturate these dark areas as you're brushing it, but that's to be expected. That's something that we're going to fix later on. So I'm going to use different sizes of brush just to paint out these shadow areas. Keep adjusting the brush as I go along. The idea is to get the whole image to be a kind of a uniform color and brightness across the whole image. So all the shadow and highlight areas should be the same kind of brightness value. So if I just show and hide that, you'll see the difference it's making. So I'm going to just carry on with these shadow areas. You may have to zoom in at some point just to get the finer details. So you can see there it's really oversaturating these particular areas, but that's to be expected. Like I said, we're going to fix that in a minute. So we're going to carry on just kind of painting out these shadow areas. Ideally you should just kind of carry on until they're all gone, until they're all a uniform brightness. That's probably went a bit too far there. Let's just undo a few of those. There we go. So you might need to zoom in, as I say, just to get the finer detailed areas. You may need to make your brush a bit softer as well if it's too harsh on each brush stroke. Just make your brush a bit softer. Or you can use the pen pressure sensitivity option. So again, as we're painting it out, as we're making it lighter, it's really oversaturating these areas. And the way to fix that, if I show you that now, just if we zoom out. The way to fix that is to, once you've done all of your shadow painting on all of your shadow areas, is to control click the alpha mask of the levels adjustment layer, and that will load it as a selection. It doesn't show all the selection area. It'll only show selected pixels that are more than 50% opaque, which most of these aren't, so it'll only show a tiny little bit, but it has selected all of it. And now we're going to put down a hue saturation hue saturation layer adjustment layer, and we're going to take this saturation down probably to about 30-ish. Just close that. So if I show and hide that, what you can see now is let's just zoom in a bit here. is it's desaturated those exact same areas that we've just painted out in the shadows. So if I alt click this mask, you can see this is what we painted in the levels adjustment layer. And if I alt click the one for the hue saturation adjustment, you can see it's exactly the same. So the idea would be to go through all the shadow areas and bring them all up to the required brightness, and then load in the hue saturation adjustment layer. And then what I would tend to do is hit the highlights next. So if we do another levels adjustment, so just going to put down another levels adjustment layer, and then use the input blacks, just slide those up until we're looking at the highlight areas now. So watching these highlight areas, just slide those up until they're a nice kind of dark value. So probably about there. And again, we're going to fill with the alpha of that layer selected. We're going to fill it with black, so it's not applying that to any part of the image. And then we're going to put our foreground color back to white, and then use a brush again, a really soft brush, and just paint white back into the alpha to hit all these highlight areas, to bring the value of these highlight areas down to match the rest of the image. And again, you have to get a kind of balance between the shadows and the highlights across the whole image. It needs to be uniform across the whole image. So it may not look like it's doing much, but if I just do a little bit more here, and then show and hide this layer, you can see the effect it's having, and there was a slight effect on the brightness. And then again, you might need to zoom in and use a smaller brush to get some of the finer details. These areas like the end of the nose usually have quite a lot of specularity to them, and we can go in even further and get this really bright bit here. Depending on how detailed you want your texture to be, you can spend more or less time doing this. So we're just going to get all those areas there, and then zoom out again. And what you might find is that this levels adjustment will desaturate the areas that you're painting. So you might find you need to do the opposite of what you did here. So you need to load in the selection and then put down another hue saturation, but this time increase saturation of those particular areas. But it depends how your image looks. Each image looks different once you've painted it. So if I just show and hide that, you can see the kind of effect it's having. This obviously isn't a perfect example. You need to spend a lot of time. It usually takes a couple of hours to do an image like this, maybe an hour and a half. And so basically, we need to do that to all of our images. So we need to line them up with our projection reference wireframe, and then paint out all the lighting. And then the images will all be ready to project onto our model in Mari once we've saved them out. So we're going to save this as a TIFF, as a projection image TIFF, and then we'll take them into Mari. So the next lesson will be taking all these images into Mari and projecting them onto the model, and setting up the shader modules and the Mari projections. So that will be the next lesson. In this section, we're going to start building up our Mari scene using our reference images to project onto the model to create the final texture. So one of the first things I've done with the reference images is to make a comparison image. So if I just open that and show you what that is, Basically, I've taken each of the prepped reference images, brought them all into one big PSD file in Photoshop. That way, you can check each of the image against the other images, just to make sure that they're all the same kind of brightness, saturation values, and the same kind of hue values. And if you find one that's not quite right, not quite the same, right, say this one for instance was slightly too light and slightly too saturated, you can use adjustment layers to make it match, to take the levels and the saturation down, and you can then copy those adjustment layers back to the original PSD where you painted this image, so that way you know that it's going to match all the other images. This is just to help us later on when we project these onto the model, to make sure that each of these images matches, so we don't have to mess around with them too much when we get them into Mari. Right, if I just close these and go back to our Mari scene, so I'm just going to open the same archive that we used earlier. So this has got all the projection cameras and everything in it. So if I go to the projectors palette, and then back to the front projector to make that current, I'm just going to get rid of this head-up display here. If I go to display properties and turn off the HUD there, that just gives us a little bit more room there. And then I'm going to so I've got the front camera selected. So over here in the channels tab, this is the default channel that was created when we made this Mari file. So I'm just gonna rename that to base, because we're going to use the front projection as our base for the rest of the texture. And in the shaders tab, I'm going to make a new surface shader for us to start on. So I'm just going to add surface shader. I'm just going to rename that to color, and in the preferences for this color shader, I'm going to change the current channel for the base to our base channel, which is what we're going to project our front image onto. So with the base, I'm going to select the base channel and the front camera, and then we're going to import our front projection image, that one there. So if we import that in, that will now put that image onto the paint buffer. Now that is just in the paint buffer at the moment, that's not actually baked onto the image, baked onto the model. You can see that if I just erase that, so you can see that I'm erasing from the paint buffer. So to actually bake that onto the model, we need to hit B on the keyboard, and that will, after a few seconds, bake it down onto the actual model. So now if I rotate that, you can see the image actually baked onto the model. Still retaining a fair bit of detail there from the texture, which is quite good. And you can see there where it's stretched in the areas where the model polygons are perpendicular to the camera. So that's our base texture. If I put that into constant shaded mode, you'll get an idea of what it is we've actually projected. And you can see in UV mode, if we go into UV mode, that's what's actually been projected onto the model. So that one projection image gives us that much kind of coverage. So that's what we're going to use as our base. And now we need to just project all the other cameras on top of that, and gradually build up our texture. So I'm just going to tweak the settings of the shader slightly, just to make it look slightly nicer. So I'm going to put the ambient light up quite high and the diffuse light down quite low, and I'm going to put some ambient occlusion back into that. So that looks slightly better now. Okay, so that's the first base projection. So now what we're going to do is project the other images. So if we go to in our projectors window, if we go to our left camera, what we need to do now is go to channels, right click and add channel, and we're going to call this one, just call it left. And that's going to be 4K 16-bit, and it's going to be RGBA. In the color tab there, we're going to make it a transparent channel, and hit OK. So next thing we're going to do is add another channel to use as a mask for that channel. So we're going to right click, add channel, and we're going to call this one left mask. So that, again, that's 4K 16-bit, but this one's going to be RGB, and it's going to be a pure opaque white. So it's pure white and fully opaque. So if we go to our shaders tab now, so what we're going to do now in our color shader is to add a new shader module, and it's going to be a masked module, and it's going to be a masked diffuse. So now in the properties for that masked diffuse channel shader module, we're going to select the base texture is going to be our left channel, and the mask texture is going to be our left mask channel. So if I just minimize these now, I'm just going to rename that to left. So we've got our base shader module and our left shader module. So in the channels tab, I'm going to select the left channel. Then we're going to come over here and make sure we've got the left camera selected, and we're going to import the left image. So that's importing the left image onto the left, through the left camera onto the left channel. And then we're going to hit B to bake. So now if I rotate that, you can see where it's projected the left image over the top of the base that we had before. Obviously we don't want it to look like this, so what we're going to do is going to hand paint the mask to blend these two channels in. So if we go to the left mask channel, we're going to use a standard brush. Make sure that's black. If we go to our brushes, our brush editor, I'm just going to take off the pressure settings because I don't personally like those, and I'm going to reduce the flow right down. Just give that a little test in here. Just make it a bit bigger. So now we're painting onto our left mask channel, and we're just going to blend those in. In fact, if we do this in constant shader mode, it'll be easier to see. Just going to adjust the radius as we go to the finer bits. And then B to bake. So we can see there, if I show and hide the left channel, you can see the bits that it's that we've used the left channel for this. You know, the side of the nose bit here, and the side of the face here. So again, you can spend a bit more time just getting this looking quite nice. So there, if we'll go with that for the moment. So if we look at that in shaded mode, you can see it's starting to look okay. So then basically we're just going to go around the rest of the model and project the rest of the images and through all the other cameras. So if I now go to the left 45 camera, and then we're going to again make another channel. So add channel, we're going to call this one left 45, and it's going to be an RGBA and transparent, and then we're going to make another one called left 45 mask, and that's going to be 4K 16-bit RGB and white opaque. And then back to our shaders, add new shader module, masked modules, masked diffuse. I'm just going to rename that left 45, and the base texture is going to be left 45, the mask texture left 45 mask. So then back in channels, make sure we've got our left 45 channel selected, our left 45 camera selected, and we're going to import our left 45 image, and then B to bake. So then again with the left 45 mask channel selected, put that in constant shader mode. I'm going to use a standard black brush. I'm just going to get rid of all the bits that we don't want. I'm just going to put the flow up slightly. Yeah, so something like that. And then on to the next camera. So if we go to the next one is the back camera. So back to channels and then add channel. Channel called back, 4K 16-bit RGBA transparent. And then another channel called back mask, 4K 16-bit, this one's RGB and opaque. And then shader module, add new shader module, masked diffuse. I'm just gonna rename that to back. And the current channel, the base texture is going to be back, and the mask texture is going to be back mask. So with our back camera selected, we're going to import the back image onto the back channel and then hit B to bake. And then again we're going to just select our back mask channel, use a standard black brush and just paint out the bits that we don't want. and then hit B to bake, and so we're starting to get even more coverage now. Okay, it's not looking too bad. And we can just show and hide bits, show and hide that channel just to see the bits that we don't want. So we're just going to get rid of that. You'll always get areas like that that need fixing afterwards, which is something we can go into in the next section. So if I put that on, we can see starting to get even more of the texture projected on. So we're going to go, just keep going. Going to go onto our next camera now, which is the 45-degree right. So if we go over here to our right 45 in our channels, we're going to make a new channel. We're going to call it right 45. It's 4K 16-bit RGBA, and it's opaque. It's transparent. This one, and then the next one is going to be right 45 mask, 4K 16-bit RGB, and this one is opaque. So shaders, shader module masked, mask diffuse. Base texture is right 45, mask texture is right 45 mask. It's going to rename that to right 45. So with our right 45 camera selected, we import our right 45 image onto our right 45 channel, and then hit B to bake. And same again, so we just select our mask channel, standard brush, and we're just going to mask out the bits that we don't want. Do this in constant shaded mode, gives us a better idea of what we're actually painting. Just going to put the flow of the brush down slightly, make it slightly bigger just to blend it in a bit better. So then on to the next one, which will be this this left one, right one, sorry. Actually, before we do that, I'm just going to get rid of this stuff here. So we can just show and hide that just to make sure we've got rid of all the bits we need to get rid of. Yeah, so then if we go to our right camera, again channels, make a new channel. We're just going to call this one right. And that's going to be 4K 16-bit RGBA, transparent, and then add channel, right mask, 4K 16-bit RGB, and opaque. So with our right channel selected, we're going to make a new shader module, mask modules, mask diffuse, and then we're going to set that to right for the base and right mask for the mask. So with our right channel selected, we're going to select the right camera and import the right image and hit B to bake. So same thing again, we're just going to use a standard black brush to get rid of the areas that we don't want in our right, select our right mask channel. So if we just then move on to our, actually it's just show and hide that just to make sure we've got all the bits we need to get. That's pretty cool. So if we look at the nose there, we can see that right projection image is slightly lighter. So it might be an idea just to darken that down slightly. So if we select that channel and just go filter levels, I'm just going to reset that and then just slightly darken it down. You can see it kind of matches slightly better now. It's not going to be perfect from these projection images, but it's a slightly better match. We can clean it up a bit further in Photoshop afterwards. So let's move on to the next image. Let's do the bottom one. So if we go to our bottom camera, so add channel, bottom 4K 16-bit RGBA, transparent, and then bottom mask 4K 16-bit RGB, opaque. And then with we go to our shaders. We didn't rename that shader module, so I'm just going to rename that one. And then make a new one, masked diffuse. This one's bottom. The base texture is bottom, and the mask texture is bottom mask. So with our bottom channel selected, we're going to go make sure we've got the bottom camera. Going to import the bottom image, and then B to bake. And then on the mask channel, we're going to just mask out all the bits we don't want. Again, that image is quite light, so it might be a good idea just to darken that down slightly. You'll always get some bits that need kind of fixing afterwards as well. So I'm just going to select the bottom channel and go filter levels. Just darken that down slightly until it matches the rest. So there we go, that's another one done. And if we just put that on, we can see what it's kind of looking like. So these areas, a little bits here and there that'll need fixing afterwards. So if we go on to the next bit, which will be we go for the top front. So we're going to add a channel, and we're going to call this top front 4K 16-bit RGBA. and transparent, and then we're going to add another one called top front mask 4K 16-bit RGB and opaque. So then with our top front channel selected, our top front camera selected, we import our top front image. Actually, we need to do the shader module as well. I forgot about that. Right, let's add new shader module, mask diffuse, top front and top front mask. So now with that channel selected, we can hit B to bake, and then we can just paint out the bits that we don't want. Oops, on the right channel, so make sure we got our mask channel selected. There we go. So if we just again just show and hide that, just to make sure we got all the bits that we need to get. And then move on to our, I think it's our final image, our final projection, which would be the top back, which is this one. So new channel, top back 4K 16-bit RGBA and transparent, and top back mask 4K 16-bit RGB opaque. Top back and then shader module. Let's just minimize that. New shader module, masked modules, masked diffuse. Base texture is going to be top back, and the mask texture is top back mask. Let's just rename some of these. So that was top front. And then if we rename that one, oops, top back. There we go. So in channels, we've got the top back selected, top back camera. And we're going to import the top back image. And then B to bake. And then select the top back mask channel and just paint out the bits that we don't want. So quite a few bits there that are gonna need kind of cleaning up afterwards. Bits where the projection doesn't quite cover everything. That's okay, we can clean those up. So that's all of the projection images used. If I put the shading back on, you can see what the final texture is starting to look like. So yeah, it still needs quite a bit of cleanup. But if I look at the if we look at the UV layout, we can see what we've actually projected. So this is the kind of coverage we've got from the projection images. If I just close down the projectors window, I'll make that a little bit bigger. So you can see there now there's kind of sections that need balancing out, so that's a bit saturated and kind of a dark bit here and there, and there's a few little light bits that need matching out. Yeah, especially on the top of the head, there's a few bits there that need kind of fixing up. Yeah, I'll go through that in the next section. But yeah, for now that's the start of our final texture. It's not a bad amount of detail in there. So yeah, that's the coverage we get from the projection images. So the next bit will be just to clean up and to finish it off and to do some secondary maps. So that'll be the next lesson. So in this next lesson, I'm going to just take you through a few basic techniques for cleaning up our projections to create the final texture. Now, Mari has various different tools that are similar to Photoshop, like clone stamp and brushes and things that you can use. One of the first things we're going to need to do is combine all of our channels here into one manageable channel. All these channels still exist as separate elements with all the different projections on them. So if I just switch these off one by one, you can see all the different elements that make up our final texture. So the first thing we need to do is combine all these into one, so that we can paint on one final channel and use that to fix into the final texture. So to do that, we need to make sure we've got our color shader selected, and we can see here all the different shader modules that we've created to make our color shader. I'm just going to minimize all of these. There's quite a few there. So these are all the different shader modules that make up our final shader. So what I'm going to do is just going to go to with that shader selected. I'm going to go to channels and bake shader, which gives us the bake shader dialog box. So I'm going to select the component to bake, which is just the diffuse color. I'm going to put a name in there, just going to call it baked, and I'm going to specify 4K or whatever size you want, and leave the rest of it as it is. You can do different color spaces and 16-bit or 32-bit. I'm just going to leave that as they are for now, and I'm going to hit all visible patches. So that will do all the different tiles, all the different UV tiles, and it will bake them all down onto a single channel. It's going to take a few seconds to process that. And when that's done, you should see that it will automatically switch back to the default shader, which is set up to just display the current channel that's selected, and the current channel that's selected is our baked channel, which is what we created when we baked the shader. So that single channel now contains all of the projected images and things that we projected on through our color shader with all our different shader modules. So if I go to the UV layout, you can see all the different tiles are there, and it's all on one single channel. Now with that what we can do is then go into this channel and start cleaning up on here. There's various different things you can do. With that selected, we can go down here to the clone stamp tool. So it works in pretty much the same way as Photoshop, except you control click instead of alt click. I think in Photoshop you have to alt click. In Maya you have to control click. So you can clone different bits just to kind of fix like this area by the ear. Don't forget to hit B to bake when you've done your painting. So let's just do a really quick and rough clone over these parts. Obviously you need to spend a bit more time getting it a bit more accurate, so just hit B to bake. And the same with some of this stuff here. You can also go in and adjust all the brush parameters. One thing that's quite good to do is to create custom brushes in Maya. If I just show you some of the presets, some of the presets are quite good. All sorts of different hard surface and organic brushes. If I show you one that I use quite often, which is this oily drip. So I'm going to just select this oily drip brush from the brush palette. Obviously holding down R on the keyboard, you can adjust the radius of it. It's showing 2 there because I've got the clone stamp tool selected, so that's now going to show the clone source there when I control click, and then when I click it will show where it's cloning it to. If I just shrink the size of that down a bit, if you look over here on the right, this big square box here, you can see what the brush is actually going to look like when you paint. So what we can do is go to the properties and just adjust the properties until we get something that looks slightly better. So I'm just going to take the spacing right down. That's pretty cool. I'm going to take off, I don't like the pen pressure stuff, so I'm going to take that off. I'm going to take off the opacity jitter. Maybe take the I'm going to take the opacity up to 100% and the flow kind of down a bit. And a good thing about this little white box here is you can use it as a test pad to test your brush. So I'm just going to paint in here just to test to see what that brush actually does, what it looks like when you paint. So that's quite a good little feature there. So with that new brush created, I'm going to just continue to kind of clone over these bits that need fixing, and then B to bake, and the same with this nose area here. So that's quite a useful tool to use. So one of the other things that's quite useful to use is tile maps. Now if I show you just how to create a really basic tile map just to fix these areas of the neck, that'll be quite a good way of fixing those areas. So I'm going to do this with a fresh shader. So I'm going to go back to our shaders tab here, and I'm going to right click and add surface shader. I'm just going to rename that so I don't get confused. I'm going to call it a tile. And in the base diffuse section of that, I'm going to set that to our baked channel. And I'm going to select add new shader module and scroll right down to the bottom and select tiled. Now there's various different parameters and properties for the tiled shader module. The first thing we're going to do is tell it to use a tile image. If I just jump into Photoshop quickly, I've got here just a tile image that I've made from some skin. It's just a blank patch of skin. It's quite big. It's a 4K square. You have to make sure that your image is a square image, 1K, 2K, 4K, 8K, something like that. So there's a fair bit of detail there in this skin map. And I've made it tileable in Photoshop by just using the offset filter. So if I close that and go back to Maya, I'm just going to load that in to our tile shader. It's this one here, and you can see what that does is just apply it to the whole model, to every UV tile. It's just got that. It's just kind of slap that on. But what you can also see is that the scale isn't quite right. It's not very good. It's too big. So what we need to do is get it to repeat on the U and the Y, on the U and the V, which are, obviously U is X horizontal and V is Y vertical. So down in this section here, I'm going to put in the U repeat. I'm going to try 2 and 2 in the V. So that's looking slightly better now. It's slightly more, a slightly better scale there. You may even want to go even higher if you want it even finer. So if I go 3 and 3, that would make it even smaller. So yeah, that's looking a little bit better. So yeah, that's applied it across the whole model now, all the different UV tiles. So the next thing we need to do is this doesn't exist in any channel at the moment. It just exists within this shader. So I've got no way of adjusting or cloning out these seams or anything, or doing anything to this until it's baked down onto a channel. So the next thing we need to do is exactly that. We need to go to Channels, Bake Shader. Again, I'm going to select the component, which is diffuse. I'm going to call this skin tile. I'm going to bleed the edges and select the size and leave the rest of it as it is, and then again hit all visible patches. So that will bake that shader on across all of the UV patches into a new channel called skin tile. So now you can see it's automatically switched back to the default shader there, which is showing the current channel. So if I go to Channels, I've got the skin tile selected, and you can see now that skin tile map exists on a separate channel. So what we can do now is use this mask to blend it in with our texture. So I'm going to make a new channel in our Channels tab. So I'm just going to click New Channel, and I'm going to call it Skin Tile Mask. 4K 8-bit RGB, that's fine. I'm going to color that. I'm going to color it black, so nothing will be visible when we actually mask it, and then we can paint it back in. So I'm going to go back to shaders, and I'm going to make another shader, another surface shader. I'm going to call this one. I'm going to call this one Final. So in our base diffuse parameter here, we're going to select our baked channel, and then we're going to make a new shader module for our skin tile, and that's going to be a masked diffuse again. And in the properties, if I just minimize that, in the properties for the masked diffuse, the base channel is going to be our skin tile, and the mask channel is going to be our skin tile mask. So now with our skin tile mask channel selected, we can, if I go into the constant shaded mode, it's easier to see, we can just go in and paint in the skin where we want it. So if I go to brushes, I'm going to make another brush again because I quite like that oily drip brush. So if I select that one, I'm going to just adjust the parameters of it. I'll show you how to save this as well when you've adjusted the parameters. So I'm going to take that off. I'm going to take the spacing down. I'm going to take the pen pressure stuff off. Let's have a look. That's pretty cool. I might just change the rotation so it's not aligned to stroke, but it is jittering the rotation. That's going to vary it up a bit. So that's quite a nice little brush I've created there. So if I now go to shelves, I've actually already done this before, but if you click on this button here, which is Add Brush to Shelf, that will add that brush you've just created to your custom shelf here. So there, I've got it. I can just select that now any time I want. So even if I go back to one of the basic presets, so that's just a basic preset brush now. If I want my other brush, I just go to Shelves, select that, and I've got my my custom created brush back again. So if we go to the Channels tab and make sure we've got our skin tile mask channel selected, I'm going to make sure the color I've got selected is pure white, and we're just going to paint pure white back onto our channel, onto our skin tile mask channel. Just the size of the brush there. So you can see there it doesn't really match in with the rest of the skin, which is to be expected really. So I'm just going to roughly paint in the areas where I want the skin, and then we can work on adjusting it to match afterwards. You can see there's also a seam there that will need to be fixed as well. So I'm just going to go in and clone in these areas that, paint in these areas that I want. It may be easier to do it in the UV layout as well. You can do it just as easily in the UV layout. So again, just painting that in where I want it. So there's some other bits and pieces here where it could do with some basic skin. So I'm just going to clone in those. Just going to paint in those areas. There's some bits here of the inside, I think, of the eye sockets and the mouth and stuff that could just be covered in skin. So I'm just going to do a really rough paint at the moment, and then once that's all baked, I can, if I go back to our perspective view, you can see there. Obviously, it doesn't look great because it's all kind of, doesn't match the actual skin tone. So again, because we've used a separate channel on a mask, we can go back to our skin tile channel here, and then adjust it with filters until it matches the rest of the skin tone. So let's try a hue filter. Obviously, remember to reset and then hide and show. Let's just take the saturation down slightly until we got something that kind of matches in terms of saturation. And then I'm going to try maybe a levels filter just to bring the brightness up to match the rest of it. So filter, levels, again reset, hide and show, and I'm just going to crunch the input there. So when I pull that input white's value down a bit, it's resaturating it. So I'm going to need to do maybe another hue on that just to take the saturation down again. So back to hue, again reset, hide, show, just take the saturation down slightly. So now we've got a much better match to our main skin tone here. Obviously, when you do it, you should do a bit of a better blend on this. So I can still go in and adjust the mask, and like there, it's not quite blended in that well, and there's a line there where it needs to be blended in. So yeah, just spend a bit more time getting it looking slightly better. So you can do the same thing with like the hair on the top here. You can make a tile map of the hair, and where it's gone a bit soft and where it's a little bit stretched, you can mask in and where the hair is missing on the back of the ears. The same thing, we can use our skin tile shader just to paint into the back of the ears here, and maybe clone from bits of the skin on the head onto here, just to kind of fix those areas. So yeah, I mean that's the kind of techniques you would use to fix this. Obviously, you need to spend a lot more time and be a lot more precise about it. So when we've got all our fixing done, we can bake everything down onto another channel, and we've got a finished map. So if I show you, I'm just going to close this and show you one that I've painted up. So this is one that I've cleaned up, finished cleaning up, and baked all onto one channel. I've also adjusted the overall color and brightness of this as well, just to give it a little bit more contrast. So this has been cleaned up using all the various different techniques I showed you. So I've done the ears and the inside of the nose, and the eyes have all been cleaned up a bit. Obviously the skin on the neck has been cleaned. So that's kind of a finished texture. Also, what you have to remember, you can still go in and fix this in the UV layout in Photoshop. You can just export this. So if we look in channels here, I've got one single channel, so this all exists on one single channel, and that's just the default shader. So to get this into Photoshop, if we want to do even more fixes on this, all I would do is go to channels, select our baked channel here, and hit export. You can do it as a single sequence, or you can do individual UV tiles here, and you just give it a name. Just hit there and tell it where to save and what file name and an extension to use. If you're doing a sequence, you want to put in this $udim, which will give it the UV numbering coordinate. So 1001, 1102, 12, all the rest of it. So that's all the different UV or UDIM numbers, not UV numbers. UV coordinate numbers are here, but this is Mari's own UDIM numbers. So if we open this up in Photoshop. If I show you, I'll just open the first one, the first tile here. So this has come straight out of Mari from our exported. This is before I cleaned it up. Actually, this is the one that hasn't been cleaned up, so it still needs a lot of work doing to it. So we can do various different things to this in Photoshop, pretty much in the same way as we painted out the shadows and highlights on the original reference image. So you might find there's an area that's, maybe this area is a little bit too kind of bluey purple. So we would do it exactly the same way as we did with the highlights and the shadows. We would just put down a hue saturation adjustment layer, and then maybe just adjust the saturation and the hue slightly, just to make it a little bit more yellow. And then obviously fill that mask with black, and then paint it back in just with a standard brush. So if I put the opacity and the flow of the brush down, I can just paint in. Let's just make sure I've got a decent brush selected. There we go. So I can just now. If I'm painting white, I can just paint in the areas where I want the mask adjustment layer to be visible. So now if I show and hide that, you can see the difference. So I mean, you can use that technique to do various different adjustments to this in Photoshop. You can also do that in Mari if you want to do this kind of adjustment in Mari. You can. If I show you a way of doing that in Mari, I'm just going to close that. So this is our cleaned up texture map that we've got. So say for instance, there's maybe an area here that's a little bit too dark. You want to just lighten up this area. Now this is all on one channel, remember, so this is all one single image. So what we would need to do is this area here, to adjust this, we would need to lift it into the paint buffer. So we need to basically take the paint off of the model, off of the UVs, into the paint buffer where we can adjust it and then bake it back down. And the best way to do this is to use the clone stamp tool. Now, depending on what operating system or what computer you're using, the key might be different. But for me, on Windows, I'm going to hold down Control and the Windows key, and then just click once, and you'll notice that there's now the clone source area is directly beneath the brush. So basically, it's cloning directly on top of itself. So it's going to clone from the model straight up into the paint buffer. Now obviously if I just clone away now, you can't really see anything because it's exactly the same. It's just going straight on top of itself. So in order for us to actually see what we're painting, what I would do is go down into the projections tab down here. I'll just adjust that. So projections tab down here into our painting parameters, and the painting mode, I'll change that from normal onto multiply. So now it's going to multiply it. So when I paint now, you'll be able to see it's going really dark because it's multiplying. So it's multiplying that area directly back onto itself. Obviously we don't want to bake it like that. That's just to give us a visual look at what it is we're actually painting, so we can see what we're actually painting. So once we've painted the area that we want to affect, what we'll then do is go back to the painting mode and put that back to normal. So now that area we've just painted is in the paint buffer. So if I want to adjust that, all I've got to do is go to filters and levels, remember to reset, and then hide and show, and then where it's got apply to current channel, I'm going to change that from current channel to current painting. So with that on current painting, we can adjust the area we've just painted because it's in the paint buffer. So current painting means basically what's in the paint buffer. So this is going to apply this levels adjustment to what's in the paint buffer. So I can just adjust the brightness of that slightly, or it works the same for the other filters, like hue, saturation, and the color curves and that kind of thing. So yeah, we can do whatever adjustment we need to that, and then hit apply, and then make sure we bake. Hitting apply just applies the filter, it doesn't actually bake onto the model. So if I hit B to bake, that's now baked that, what we've just painted, what we've just adjusted, it's baked it onto the actual model. So that's one way of kind of achieving the same thing in Mari that we were doing in Photoshop. So what I'll do now is just take you through some really quick and simple secondary maps. When I say secondary maps, I mean things like bump and speck, that kind of stuff. Depending on what you're using it for and what you're painting, or how it's going to be rendered, you might need a number of different secondary maps. You could need bump, speck, displacement, ID maps, normal maps, subsurface scatter maps, anything like that. They're all kind of lumped under the name of secondary maps. So if I just show you how to do a really basic bump map, it will give you an idea of what you can do. So I'm going to just take our baked channel here and duplicate that. So I'm just going to duplicate that channel, and I'm going to rename that a bump. I'm going to turn this into a bump map. So with this bump channel selected, obviously we've got our default shader selected, which is just showing the current channel. So with that bump channel selected, I'm just going to do a hue filter, and I'm just going to desaturate it by 100%. Obviously that's still on current painting, so I need to change that back to current channel. So that literally just desaturates that channel by 100%, so it's totally grey. So all the information is still there, all the actual textural detail is still there, it's just now got no colour. So the next thing I'm going to do is filter high pass. If I just go in a bit closer so you can see what it's doing. So again, filter high pass. So you can see there it's kind of evened out all the values to a mid-grey point. You can adjust the radius to have more or less contrast or more or less detail in there. So I might slide the radius up a bit and then just press apply. So after a few seconds that will finish processing that. So now we've got two channels up here, our baked colour and our bump channel. So to use this actually as a bump, because at the moment this is just displaying this as a diffuse colour. So to use this actually as a bump, we need to make another shader. So if I'm going to select the baked channel and just go back to shaders tab here, and then just create, just add surface shader. And I'm going to call this, I'll call this secondaries. So in the parameters for this secondaries shader, I'm going to select the base diffuse color to be our baked channel, and then I'm going to add a new surface shader module, and it's going to be a bump module, and I'm going to select the texture for that to be our bump channel. So now if I go in a bit closer, you can see if I slide the bump weight up and down, you can see it's going to use our bump channel as a bump map. Obviously you don't want it too high, it just looks rubbish. So I'm going to get a nice amount of bump, and then I can still play around with the lighting. So maybe put the ambient light up a bit and the diffuse light down a bit, and then give it some ambient occlusion. Maybe adjust the specular gain, and then just adjust the parameters for the bump. Yeah, so we're starting to get something that looks not too bad. So we can do exactly the same for a quick specular map as well. So if I go back to the default shader, which is just going to show us whatever current channel we've got selected, and then again I'm going to duplicate this baked channel. If I call that spec, and again I'm just going to desaturate this. Just give that a few seconds, and then I'm just going to crunch the levels in. Again, remember to reset, hide and show, and then just going to crunch the levels of this just to give us a really kind of contrasted spec map. So something like that will just break up the spec nicely. Okay, just give that a few seconds to process. So what I can do now is go back to the secondary shader, and then if I just minimize those, I'm going to add another shader module again. I'm going to call this one specular gain, and I'm going to select the gain channel, gain texture channel, to be our spec channel. So it's hard to kind of see exactly what it's doing at the moment. So if I'll just make a plain grey channel, just so you can see what it's doing. I'm just going to make that pure, just a flat mid grey. And then I'll just change the base of our secondaries channel to be grey. So you can see now if I increase the, well, first of all I'll just turn off the spec one we've just done, so you can see what the bump is doing. If I go back to our bump shader module, you can see there what it's doing is just adding that surface detail, that surface bump to our texture. So if I just turn that off for a second and show you the specular one, what the specular one does, if I put the specular gain up a bit, is it just breaks up the specularity of the model. So if we remember the map that we painted, all the dark areas of the map will show up as non-shiny, and all the light areas, the white areas, will show up as shiny. So that's just a way of breaking up the specularity of the overall model. So we've got a nice kind of breakup in the specularity. So if I put the bump back on, so that's the bump and spec working in tandem. And then if I put the base diffuse back to our color map, that's all three maps: the color, bump, and spec all working in tandem. And you can see there it's a bit too shiny, so I can just adjust the specular gain a bit, or maybe put the roughness up, and then we can take the bump down a bit because it might be a little bit too bumpy. So yeah, you can play around with the settings just to get it looking quite nice. So that's kind of our finished texture. We've done our secondary maps. So you would save out the secondary maps in the same way. So you bake the shader and then just export them in the same way. So if I show you how to do a quick turntable of this, it's quite good to be able to render out a quick turntable. We'll do that using a projector. So if I go back to View, Palettes, Projectors, we've got all the projectors that we used for projecting our initial images. So if I just create a new projector in here, it'll create it based on however we've got the model viewing at the moment. I'm going to call this just call this turntable. So with our turntable projector selected, we can just right click on that and say render turntable, and that will give us the turntable window. So with this we can select the size, so say 2K square, the anti-alias, amount, the background. I usually select from canvas because the grey is a bit too light. The number of frames, I would usually take this right down to probably maybe 24, which is exactly 1 second. There's no animation to play. We don't want an offset. Filters are on. Yeah, the shaders is we want to select the current shader, otherwise it will just pick the default shader. And we want to select full lighting. You can put a comment in there. So let's just call it. Let's just put digi double head in there. You can change this text size, and you can put some reference images in there if you have them. Then all you would do is specify an output path, and the actual images that you want to output, the naming template. I would probably change PNG to TIFF. So if we hit preview, we can see that's what our turntable, that's what each image of our turntable is going to be. It's kind of look like that. Obviously it'll rotate it by 360 degrees for each image. So then all you would do is hit OK, and that would save out however many images you've told it to. So in this case 24. That will save out 24 different images, rotating the model by 360 degrees throughout the 24 frames. So that's kind of it. That's our finished texture. So I've shown you how to project from the cameras, how to warp the cameras, the images to fit the model, and project through the cameras onto the model, and then how to clean up, how to do some basic secondary maps. I hope it's been interesting and informative for you. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you managed to replicate this on your own and do your own textures. Yeah, and I hope you enjoy using Mari. Thank you very much.